The subgenre of fantasy known as sword and sorcery has been one of the mainstays of fantastic literature since it was created in the 1920s by a Texas writer named Robert E. Howard. When he wrote his story, The Shadow Kingdom, he was only about 20 years old, and he pulled together elements of adventure, horror, and traditional fantasy into a potent new mixture that has never left us since. He himself created the characters almost synonymous with the genre: Kull, Conan, Cormac MacArt, and Solomon Kane. Later, new writers took up his ideas and made their own contributions, with authors like Karl Edward Wagner and Michael Moorcock adding to this new tradition. With a resurgence in the 1960s, sword and sorcery set the dominant image for pulp fantasy, and that image has remained indelible for the past 50 years. Harsh landscapes, ancient ruins, muscular heroes and heroines cutting their way through tales filled with blood and thunder. But as an actual literary genre, sword and sorcery has fallen on lean times. While hugely influential in the realms of video and tabletop games, fantasy art, and even music, the actual literature of sword and sorcery has been poorly understood and often co-opted by marketing and second-rate imitations. The genre is far from its heyday in the 1960s, and in fact that very upswing in popularity led to a glut of poor works that have tarred the very word sword and sorcery with the idea of junk fiction. Howard's own long shadow in the field is in fact a part of the problem. His influence is so pervasive that it can be hard to separate his works and characters from the genre he created. It's even more difficult because his genuine works have become obscured by pastiches and derivative hackwork that are far inferior to the man's own rough-hewn fiction. A result of this is that despite a great love for sword and sorcery among fans and creators alike, the genre is viewed as inherently inferior and is not much published these days. Genuine stories appear in small press anthologies, if at all, and books are few and far between. Despite this, I believe the audience for genuine, quality sword and sorcery fiction exists, and that there is a hunger for stories that dig back to the roots of the genre and exploit what makes it compelling, rather than simply trying to cheaply imitate things that have already been done. That is the purpose I have set myself with New Iron Age. With your support, I intend to create new sword and sorcery stories that are inspired by the past but not slavishly imitative of it. I want to create quality stories in the genuine tradition of the best the genre has produced, and I want to get back to what the genre was supposed to be: a vital, exciting style of adventure story laced with horror, action, and darkness. What I don't want to do is try to recreate the tired barbarian tropes that have come to dominate the perception of the genre. At its heart, sword and sorcery is a kind of fantasy noir, rejecting the bright, polished worlds of high fantasy in favor of a harsher and bloodier vision. It's about humanity pitted against itself, against the elements, and against primordial powers or inhuman magical forces. It's about will and endurance and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. And, most importantly, it's about action and adventure and stories that go right for the throat. Come, join me in the new Iron Age.